You need to, or somebody that's not here. Guys, we've had our conversation about earbuds before. No, I like just my lectures from class are on there. All right, so standard form is the last form of a linear equation that we're going to talk about. Standard form looks like this: ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are integers. What that means is there's no fractions. Okay? Doesn't mean that there won't be fractions in the original problem, but it means that we cannot have fractions in our final answer. And we'll talk about how to get rid of them if they are there, all that kind of stuff in just a little bit. Okay? So, standard form, you've got x and y on the same side. Point slope form, you had x and y on opposite sides. Slope intercept form, you had y by itself on one side. But with standard form, you have x and y on the same side. So that's the major difference. And then there's just a plain number over here by itself. Okay, so that's the big differences in standard form and the other two forms. But standard form is easy to get if you have slope-intercept form. Okay, so we spent yesterday talking about getting the slope-intercept form. You guys did pretty good with it. So today we're going to take from slope-intercept form and move it into standard form. And that's a pretty easy process. So let's start with something like that. So write the equation in standard form. All right, so let's start with an equation that's in slope-intercept form. Y equals negative 5x plus 7. That's in slope-intercept form, right? Okay. Y is by itself. That's where it's at. Okay. Now, to be in standard form, you need x and y on the same side. So on this side, there's two things. There's an x part and a 7. So how can we get the x on the other side? Add 5x to both sides. What happens to the 5x's over here? They cancel out. All that's left is a 7. On the left-hand side, we want to write it in the correct order, x, then y. So positive 5x plus y is equal to 7. Are there any fractions in this problem?
No.
Then you're done.
What if you get a fraction in there?
We'll get to one where we do that, and we'll talk about how to get rid of it in just a little bit. We'll do some examples like that. Okay, we'll get there. Hang on just a second, Brian. Was just outside the door. Okay, I guess he didn't name me that bad. All right. Let's take another one. Let's say we had y equals 3x minus 8. And we want to write that in standard form. Okay. Subtracting 3x would get the x and the y on the same side. That's our goals. Get x and y on the same side today. That'd be negative 3x. Then what? Is it minus y or plus y? Plus y, because it was a positive y. It's plain y is positive y. Next was negative 8. That is in standard form. That's also in standard form. What's the difference? Well, it doesn't just have to be in there somewhere. What's the difference in this entire equation and this one? Yeah, everybody got their sign changed by dividing by -1. That if I change the sign of everybody, that makes that an equivalent equation. Okay, so this is correct. But when you get to like end of course test, it's like a multiple choice problem. They may not have this as an option, but they may have this as an option. These two are the same thing. If you put this back in slope-intercept form, that comes up every day. If you put this back in slope-intercept form, it would be that original problem. If you put this in slope-intercept form, it would be the original problem that we started with. They are equivalent equations. Understand that you have to change the sign of everybody for it to work like that. Okay? So here, this went from a -3 to a +3, from a positive y to a negative y, from a -8 to a +8. If you change the sign of everybody, that's legal to do. So either of those would be a correct answer. You need to be able to recognize that can happen. So all you got to remember is change the sign of everybody or nobody. It's all or none. Okay. Normally, if this number in front of x is positive, don't even think about changing it. Hey, the only time you would even think about doing that if the number in front of x is a negative. That's the only time you would ever think about doing that. Not that, like I said, on the quiz, like where, you're writing answers for me, I, just stop right there. It's fine with me. But understand that on the end of course or ACT or something like that, it's a multiple choice type question thing. This may be what they write instead of that as the correct answer. Okay. All right, let's look at another one. Let's say we had y equals 1/4 x. Make that a -1/4 x. -1/4 x plus 5. All right, so we're going for standard form. So we want x and y on the same side. So how do I get x on the other side? Add 1/4 x to the other side. Now, that's almost standard form. The only problem is we have a fraction. Okay. Anytime you have a fraction, you want to look, or if you have multiple fractions, you want to look at the denominators. 4 is the only denominator we have here. Okay. So that is going to be the common denominator. If you had a 4 and a 1/3, and we'll do one with more than one fraction in a second, but the common denominator is what you're looking for. Since the 4 is the only denominator, 4 would be the common denominator for this problem. Okay? What you want to do is multiply everybody by 4. Every piece gets multiplied by 4. The whole problem. What happens when you multiply 4 times 1/4? It's 1. So that turns into x. What's 4 times y? 4 times 5. 4 times 5 is 20. That is standard form. It doesn't have any fractions in it. X and y are on the same side. That makes standard form. Standard form cannot have fractions in it. That's the key. One of the key pieces that we've got to keep in mind. All right, so here's one that's got 2 fractions in it. Okay. How do we get x and y on the same side? Add the 2/3 x. So every time we've got something in slope-intercept form, to get it in standard form, we move the part that's got the x. That's happened on every problem that we've done. Okay, so we have 2/3 x plus y is equal to 1/6. We have 2 fractions in this one. What would the common denominator be for a 3 and a 6? 6. So that's what we need to multiply by. Multiply everybody in the problem. It's just like changing the signs. It's all or none. Everybody gets multiplied by it or nobody does. It's all or none. So what's 6 times 2/3? Which reduces to be 4. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 divided by 3 is 4. That's where that's coming from. 6 times y, that's the easiest one. I'll do that one. Maybe it's not the easiest one. What's 6 times 1/6? 1. 6 over 6, which will reduce to 1. That puts us in standard form. That number we're multiplying by is the common denominator. That's what you got to. When I moved it right there, I added, so it's positive. That's where the positive came from. Common denominator. That number you're multiplying by is the common denominator. That's what you're looking for. Okay? All right, let's do another one. It's got fractions in it. Let's say we had y equals 5 over 4x minus 2 over 9. Yeah.
All kinds of bases.
I don't know. All right, so what do we do first here? Move the 5 4 6. So we're going to subtract it on this one. These cancel out. What do we got on the next line? What's the equation? Equals. Don't for. Because that's impressive to peel out of a high school parking lot. All right. So we have fractions in here. Be careful not to lose the sign of the 2 9s. It's negative. That's a very common mistake. Now, what would be the common denominator between these two fractions? 36. 9 and 4 both go into 36. Is there anything smaller? 12. 4 goes into 12, but does 9 go into 12 evenly? No. I'm thinking about multiples of 9, about 18. 4 doesn't go into 18 evenly. 36, I think, is the smallest one. That, we're trying to look for that smallest, the least common denominator. 36 happens to be it. So we're going to multiply everybody by 36. Whew. Could we do negative 36? Would it still be in standard form if I used a negative? Yes, because what would it do to everybody? It would change their signs. It wouldn't necessarily make them all negative. It would change some of them to positive and some to negative, but it would change everybody. So yes, you could do a negative 36 if you wanted to. Okay, that's absolutely true. I'm going to do positive 36, and then we'll take care of the negative after that with the or this way. It doesn't matter which way you do it, though. The common denominator of a 36, whether you use a positive or a negative, doesn't matter. It's just the 36. Okay? All right. 36 times negative 5 over 4. 36 over 1. You can use a calculator. I'm fine with that. 4 goes into itself once into 36. 9 times negative 5 is negative 45x. The y, that one should be the easiest one, 36y. And then we're saying 36 over 1 times negative 2 over 9. Be negative 8, wouldn't it? Got rid of the fractions. Got us a standard form problem. What would be the other standard form that we could have? Yeah. Both of those are correct. Understand that they're both correct. You can stop at the red one if you want to, but understand the green one is also correct answer. That it's also in standard form. Okay. So, questions about that one? The fractions they're not going to come up a whole lot, and not on every problem by any means, but being able to get that common denominator, we spent a while on fractions back in quarter 1 for a reason, because you're going to have to be able to use them and find common denominators. So that's the whole reason we spent time doing it without a calculator. Okay, let's look at another problem. We're still writing it in standard form, but what if they start out with it like this? What form is that in? Point slope form. Oh, can we can distribute? That's 2x minus 2. And now, if I move the 4, what form will I have it in? I'd have it in slope-intercept form. So that's what I'm going to do. Because then, now, isn't this problem like the first 5 we've done? Yeah, once you get it to slope-intercept form, it's just like the others. Subtract 2x, negative 2x plus y equals 2, or 2x minus y equals negative 2. Either of those is a correct standard form for that. So starting with point-slope form, go to slope-intercept form, and then go to standard form. You're really doing that every time. You get the slope-intercept form, and then go to your standard form from there. So like if you have y plus 7 equals 5 over 3 x minus 3. So throw a fraction in there. Distribute. Still going to do the same process. We're going to go from point-slope form to slope-intercept form like we did yesterday. That's 5 over 3x. What's 5 over 3 times 3? Which reduces to 5. Then what do? Subtract the 7 to get it into slope-intercept form. 5/3 x. What's negative 5 minus 7? Negative 12. So I only have one fraction in there to deal with once I get it into standard form. So what do I do to get it in standard form? Minus 5/3 x. Negative 5/3 x plus y equals negative 12. How do I get rid of that fraction? Multiply everybody by the denominator 3. So that would be negative 5x plus 3y. 3 times 12, negative 36. Since that negative is on the x, I want to think about what else could it be? What's the other one it could be? Yeah. Either of those is correct. And you only think about the or if the number in front of x is negative once you get to standard form. Yeah. Are you psychic? The answer is yes. Let's step up toward that. Let's say it has a slope of 4 and it goes through 8, negative 2. What'd they give us? A point, and so what form does that tell us we need to start with? Point slope form. Okay, so they gave us a slope and a point. So we're going to do the point slope form. So what's the left side of the point slope form for this one? Y plus 2, good, equals minus 8. Good job. Why is it plus 2 right there? Double negative. That's exactly right. Okay. Now what do? Distribute. Well, again, we're going for standard form today. So that's 4x minus 32. Next step, subtracting 2. And I'm writing out that, I could actually be okay with you moving the 4x at the same time if you want to. I'm going to write out an extra step style, but how do you move that 4x? Subtract it. So there we got negative 34. We got negative 4x plus y. The negative is in front of the x. So we could have it as 4x minus y equals 34. Either of those is a correct standard form. So given a point and the slope, start with point slope, go to slope intercept, from slope intercept, go to standard. So everything we do builds on the previous thing. Anna, you got it? All right, let's do one of the fractions. Given the slope of negative 7/8 and through negative 16, 1. Let's build the equation in standard form. Why is it plus again? Double negative. Don't forget that. What do we do next? Distribute. Negative 7/8x. And what's 7/8 times 16? It's going to be negative 7/8 times 16. So it's going to be negative something. Fully prepared for that to be a student. All right. 8 cancels. 7 times 2 is 14. All right. Next step. Add the 1 to the 14. Oh, I didn't write 14 again. Add 1 to that. Be negative 13. And then what? Plus 7/8x. And that'd be equals negative 13. What do we got to do to get rid of that fraction? Multiply by the only denominator we have, 8. So that should be 7x plus 8y. 8 times 13. How much? 104? Should be negative, right? The number in front of x is not negative, so I don't even need to think about the or. Just stop there. Okay. So given a slope and a point, even if the slope is a fraction, we can work it that way. We're about to do that. You're psychic as well. Okay. All right. Let's say it goes through. This is from yesterday. I'm going to pick one of these. Let's say it goes through 3, 4, and 2, negative 1. What do we need? Two minus 3. That'd be negative 5 over negative 1, which is positive 5. So that's our slope. All right. And then, does it matter which ordered pair I use? Which one do you guys want to use? I would think 3, 4 would be the best one because you don't have to deal with extra negatives. Okay, so what would my point slope form be for that? Yeah, there you go. Plug it in this stuff. Work it to get x and y on the same side. 5x minus 15, y minus 4. Once you get to point slope form, it's the same thing over and over and over. It doesn't change any. So I'm adding 4. There's the slope-intercept form for that. Get the point slope form. Subtract 5x. And then, do I need to think about the or for this one? Why? There's a negative in front of the x, so it could be positive 5x minus y equals 11. Either of those is correct.